The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and are not those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. The phone lines are open. Call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788. That's 220-WSTU. It's time for Stuart Laser Talk with your host, Dr. Tred J. Rosacker.
I'm 5'10" and 242 pounds.
I always say this is the biggest I'm ever going to be, and I said that like 20 pounds ago.
A third of Americans are obese, another third is overweight.
Obesity is the biggest threat to the health, welfare, and future of this country.
I've always been overweight.
I've got diabetes,
Sleep apnea, heart disease.
everything's hurting now.
It's a lot easier to lose weight than it is to keep weight off.
This is probably going to be the first generation of children who are going to have a shorter life expectancy than their parents.
18% of our children right now are obese.
It's not only health, it's about survival and well-being of the United States as a nation.
You don't crave broccoli, and our generation has grown up craving a Big Mac.
I'm going to think that there's something better for me.
Unless we're able to control this epidemic, we're going to have an abundance of chronic disease.
All of us have to be part of the solution to reduce obesity.
The weight of the nation is out of control, but we can fix that.
If we don't now take this as a really urgent national priority, we are all going to pay a really serious price.
Obesity will crush the United States in oblivion.
Good morning, Stuart, Florida. Good morning, Treasure Coast, and good morning, the world. You're listening to WSTU 1450. This is the Slim Body Laser Spa Health and Wellness Talk. We can be heard every single Tuesday at 9 o'clock, 9:05, right up to 10:05, right here on WSTU. Share it with your friends. We're going to go over some really important information today about your health, mainly about the magical science of fasting. Okay. I know that term fasting. Oh my God. Everybody goes, oh, I don't want to stop eating. Well, let me tell you, there's some amazing things that happen within your body when you restrict calories, more than you could ever imagine. I was really surprised. So I'm going to go over that today. I've been doing fasting for about 4 or 5 months now, on and off, along with my laser. And my health has dramatically improved as a result of it. And I'm very, very happy about that. And I want to share that with you. That's really my message always is, I have this problem personally. I'm no different than anybody else. I look at solutions. I look for the least painful, the most effective, and the most cost-effective methods. And one of them is fasting. It's really easy. So I'm going to go over that today. My name is Dr. Tred Rosacker, and I've been licensed as a doctor of chiropractic for 35 years. Yeah, I'm licensed in the great state of New York and here in South Florida, in Florida. My office is called the Slim Body Laser Spa. I'm located on East Ocean Boulevard, right across from the Fresh Market, at the corner of Monterey and East Ocean Boulevard. I am using a non-invasive, low-level laser aesthetic device, the kind you'd use for body sculpting or to get rid of some stubborn fat here and there. You would, something you'd go to the dermatologist or maybe the plastic surgeon for. And using that machine to help with surface fat and spot fat reduction and shrinking subcutaneous fat has a side effect of really, really motivated people to want to go deeper into losing weight or body sculpting or improving their metabolism, basically living longer without sickness and being healthy. And there's a term that I think everybody should know about. And one of them is, of course, your lifespan. Everybody has a lifespan. The average lifespan, by the way, is only in the 80s. I think like less than 1% of the world makes it past 85. So, that's pretty set in stone. We can definitely go longer than that. I plan on being a centurion myself. I want to be over 100 at least, minimal. Yet your body, your cells are designed to actually live to be 120 years old, not 100, not even 85. Anything short of living to be well into your 110 to 115 is selling yourself short. Something had stopped or prevented your body from being healthy as you got older, and so we start dropping off the planet, in our 70s and 80s, and that's just not acceptable to me. So, however, dying is part of life. If you figure out a better way to get out, you let me know. Everyone's going to be there, but there's something that's probably more doable, more controllable than lifespan, and that would be your health span. It's called health span. And my definition of health span is having a body that you don't even really know you have it. It does everything that you desire to do. It sleeps, it wakes up, it holds its bladder, you hold your, you don't, you have regular bowel movements, you have normal amounts of energy, you have a normal diet, you can jump up and down, you can lift things, you can get up off the floor, if you fall down, your mind is able to absorb information and come up with solutions. So there's a certain amount of mind that needs to be healthy. And then the spiritual part of your body is having hope and generosity and charity for things that you appreciate, being appreciative of life in general, and having a good, positive, holistic attitude about life and people and the government and politics. Don't get all entangled in things you can't control. And it's basically, I call that being healthy. And there's a new term called health span. And health span is that part that you want your health span to equal your lifespan, an even mark. So if you live to be 75 years old or 85 or 95, and you have health up to that point, then that's a perfect number. But if you have a long lifespan and a short health span, that's can be a life of misery in the end after you lose your health. So some people might lose their health in their 40s or 30s or 50s or 60s. And that means when you lose your health, you end up in the medical model. And that would be, medications, blood pressure medications, cholesterol meds, triglyceride meds, having to take medications to lose weight, this horrible semaglutide drug, Ozempic and Wegovy. And all of these, if you're be putting on meds and you're going to the doctor to maintain basic parameters of your health, like your blood pressure and your cholesterol and these other things, I want to be very honest with you. You are in trouble. There is a problem why your symptoms are showing up as high blood pressure, as high blood sugar, as high cholesterol, as high triglycerides, as polycystic ovarian syndrome with pains in the joints, arthritic deposits from osteoarthritis, stiff neck and back muscles. These are all signs and symptoms that you're not taking care of your health. You're missing something here. And I don't think you're not missing more medication. Nobody is, the person that's put on blood pressure medication, they're not put on medication because they have a lack of the drug. They're put on medication because the heart pressure is going up. And the medical profession treats high blood pressure by giving you meds, giving you drugs to slow the heart rate down, to empty the blood volume, beta blockers to change the rhythm. And these medications are temporary controls to try to lower what the doctor sees on his exam. And why, my question is, with all drugs, why are you having these problems? We see the symptom. We can measure it. We can do imaging. You can see it on a blood pressure cuff. You can do your average over 2 months of sitting and standing blood pressure. Yet the symptom, the finding shows your blood pressure is elevated. We all agree on that. And we all agree that your blood pressure is better if it's, more balanced, if it's within normal ranges. Everybody agrees on that. Where we differ greatly is, why did this happen? What actually is going on, why your blood pressure is elevated. Okay. And, let's look at hyperglycemia. How many of you out there are being diagnosed with the beginnings of type 2 diabetes called hyperglycemia, meaning your resting caloric intake, when you rest and you haven't eaten, your fasting blood sugar is elevated. So if you don't eat for 12 hours and you have your blood sugar checked, whether it's a little finger stick that you buy at the Walgreens, you get that little blood, the little, the glucose meter at the Walgreens, and you haven't eaten for 12 hours, and then you check your blood sugar. If it's above 100, you probably have hyperglycemia. If it's over 120, 130, 140, you definitely got hyperglycemia. Now, everybody has a little spike when they first get up in the morning. It's called the cortisol spike. It's kind of what wakes you up. You had your last meal at 6 o'clock at night, and hopefully you went to sleep without snacking on cookies and ice cream. That's where most people fall, in trouble, is after dinner. They want those extra calories. And then, but when you go to sleep, let's say you make it in bed by 10, now you've slept for, 12 hours. If you wake up at 10, you slept 12. So if you wake up at 8, you've slept your 9 hours. Well, about 4 in the morning, your body kind of runs out of the calories from your dinner, right about 12. And then by 4 to 5 in the morning, your body produces cortisol, because you're starting to wake up. It's time for you to have energy. And cortisol is the hormone which creates a higher blood sugar by releasing some glucose into your bloodstream, which is stored in the liver. And in the morning, we call it a postprandial glucose spike. Now, that spike should be under 120 milligrams per deciliter, which is the measurement on a glucose meter. If your blood sugar, if you get up in the morning and it's 180, that's not good. That means you have hyperglycemia. You produce too much. And hyperglycemia, when left uncorrected, leads to type 2 diabetes. So what's important to understand about hyperglycemia is it's all about insulin levels, the hormone called insulin. I'm sure you've heard about it. Most people know what insulin is, but what they don't know is that insulin levels that are high and don't come down because of insulin sensitivity, when you have type 2 diabetes, insulin no longer works, either because you have a genetic problem, or you have a habit problem of eating too much, or you're eating foods which are processed and full of sugars and not really backing off. It also requires not exercising and carrying extra body fat. And this leads to the insulin sensitivity, desensitizing the cells that insulin no longer works. So your body produces more insulin to clear the blood sugar, and then it becomes resistant to that extra insulin raising, because basically, if you don't stop eating, putting food and sugar and processed food in, insulin is your protector. It protects you from overdoing it. And it's a God-given reaction. It's something the body is struggling to find a homeostasis, saying that if we keep making fat, if you keep eating this food, overeating every single day and not eating the healthy, right carbohydrates, the right type of foods, you're going to keep making fat. And if you make a pound of fat a month, let's say let's say you make 5 pounds of fat a month and you do that for 12 months, that's 25 something pounds. That's a lot. That's more than that. It's a lot of weight and it doesn't come down. And what your body does is your body makes receptors that the insulin no longer works. And they call that type 2 diabetes because the insulin is up, yet it's not clearing the blood sugar. So you're hyperglycemic when they do the blood test. And what's medicine's answer for that? Well, of course, make some diet changes. I don't want to beat them up on it. Or exercise more. Or exercise more and eat less. Or, eat less and exercise. In other words, that's usually about all they can give you as far as natural process to it. But, as if you're 30, 40 pounds overweight and you're in your 50s or 60s and it took you years to put all that body fat on, it is not going to be an easy thing to do that. Thus, we end up failing. And because the hyperglycemia, the high blood sugar rots your vessels, it's a vascular disease, which is why we have the changes in the neuropathy and the retinal problems with vision, why we see blurry vision. It affects the vessels because of the blood sugar. And that over turn is what starts to make us sick. So the doctor uses a drug called metformin to begin with. And metformin is very common. I'm sure you've heard a lot about it. You get it for free. It's so many people need it and use it that I think, it's almost free when you go into the pharmacy to get it, your metformin, or it's very inexpensive. And what metformin does is it lowers your blood glucose by creating your body to produce more insulin. And there's some other mechanisms here, but for the most part, it's causing the body to produce more insulin. So as a result of that, your blood sugar goes down because now your pancreas is producing more insulin. But if you don't change the habits that created the fat, the body will adapt to that next higher level of metformin dosage. So they usually start out at about 1,000 twice a day. And then it can go up to 2,000 twice a day, which is really high for metformin. And then they'll include another drug when the insulin becomes desensitized to that higher level. Now, your body's still producing insulin in large amounts, but your cells are less receptive to it, which is insulin resistance. But there's other changes that happen from high insulin because insulin is a storage molecule. It's a hormone that causes you to store things. Fat is one of them, other energy. And now, because the body is, you still have too much body fat and you're not exercising, you're still eating the wrong foods. The body then raises the resistance to now even the metformin stops working. And then they put you on a glipizide, which is glucotrol, I think is one of the brand names. It's that little 5 milligram pill you're taking along with your metformin. I know this because I have diabetes. And what happens with that is a drug that can really drop your blood sugar fast. And that's what can lead to these hypoglycemic attacks. If you do the glucotrol at the wrong time and you don't have something sweet to eat, you can really crash your blood sugar. And then you get sweaty and you feel weak and it's not a good thing. So, and then what happens is as a result of that, now you're trying to manage your symptoms, the blood sugar, the diarrhea that comes from metformin, the ups and downs with hypoglycemia, with the glucotrol, and you really don't know how foods are affecting you, which is another huge thing. If you don't know, get a glucose meter. It changed my life. I bought a glucose meter. I spent the $250 a month to get one every 2 weeks. And for the first time in my life, I could see my blood glucose level from when I went to bed for 24 hours when I went back to bed, and I could see my ups and downs, and I was able to put my food, what I was eating, within those numbers. And I found out there's some foods I eat which spike my insulin really fast. There's other foods I eat, which they told me would spike my insulin, didn't spike my insulin that fast. So everybody handles food differently internally. All bread doesn't make everybody sugar, doesn't make everybody diabetic. Let's be realistic. There are some people that can eat bread and it doesn't raise their blood sugar that much. For me, I've got metabolic syndrome and I got it. Don't know where I really have it. I was heavy in my early 50s. I lost the weight. I only had the weight on for about 7 years, but I was quite fat. I was 265 pounds. I'm 195 right now. And as a result of it, I had hyperglycemia. And I ended up being put on the metformin and then the glucotrol. And I was on those drugs for over 5 years, miserably managing my blood sugar. It was really, really hard because I didn't understand the importance of eating food which does not raise insulin. So the solution to insulin sensitivity and type 2 diabetes is finding foods that you eat that do not require insulin to bring the energy into the cell. If insulin is the problem, high insulin levels is the problem, eating foods that do not raise insulin is a really good idea. And that's what I found out. So that was the first step that I did. And you can call that type of diet a keto diet because carbohydrates, plants and fruit, and then the foods that are made from plants and fruit, such as pasta and breads and rices and candies because of the sugar, these things, these foods cause hyperglycemia. And those foods need insulin to bring it into the cell. So if you start your day out with a bagel, or you start your day out with some French toast, or even 2 slices of bread with your omelet, you have raised your insulin levels because of those 2 pieces of bread, or because of that flour product that you had, the bagel, the French toast. Even oatmeal raises insulin because it's a carbohydrate. It's not a protein. It's not a fat. Now, proteins do not raise insulin, and nor do fats. So if you have a piece of, suppose you go to what is this, Barbecue Brothers over there on Golden Gate. He's got that slow cooked pork ribs. If you get the rib plate and there's 3 ribs in there, other than the sugar from the barbecue part, if you could get it without that, that would be better. But that rib, because it's protein and fat, is not going to raise your insulin the same way than if you had a sandwich, a turkey sandwich with bread, on it. The bread and the turkey is going to raise your insulin faster than eating that pork rib. Another fantastic food to eat if you want to keep your insulin levels low are eggs. Hard-boiled, scrambled, made into egg salad. Eggs are a go-to for me to not raise my insulin when I choose foods. So I take 12 eggs, boil them, 10 minutes, hard-boiled egg, put ice on them because ice separates the egg shell from the soft egg part. If you ever have a hard time peeling eggs, put ice on them after you boil them. And then I put them in the fridge. They're cold. And then I shell them under the running water in the sink. And I make egg salad. So now you've got albumin, which is a really good protein. And you've got the fat, which is a really good fat within the egg. By the way, eggs don't raise your cholesterol. Sugar raises your cholesterol. Eggs do not, nor does fat. Fat is your friend with weight loss. Fat is high energy and does not require insulin for it to go into the cell. So if you eat a meal that's high in fat and low in sugar and carbohydrates, and you have good proteins, you're going to defeat over time your type 2 diabetes. So that's called a keto diet. It doesn't mean you're going into ketosis, which is a whole nother explanation. I'm going to go over here in the next half hour, a little bit about ketosis and what it means to be in ketosis and what ketone bodies are. But this realization in my own life that I can't really enjoy carbohydrates like everybody else does, or die. I don't want to die. I want my health span to be as long as my lifespan. And it means I have to give up some certain foods. I'm okay with that. Plus, I really like proteins and fats. I'm not upset about it. Now I have vegetables that are fresh, raw vegetables, lettuce, carrots, peas, string beans, kale, all the different greens, varieties. If I have a big salad, it's going to be with a little bit of olive oil and a little bit of balsamic vinaigrette with a little salt and pepper, just enough to flavor it. I'm not eating a salad dressing, which is creamy or that's been processed with fake stuff in it or fake sugars. I don't want that. And so I find out that a salad of mainly water-based salad material, not corn, not potatoes, not avocados are good, but they're high calorie, very dense, but they have good fat in it. Beets are full of sugar. So's corn and so's carrots. So they have a lot of high sugar content. And what I find is if I eat too much of that, that will raise my blood sugar a little bit, but nothing like a bagel does, not even close. Or even 1 or 2 scoops of ice cream can do that to me. And as a result of that, you can reverse type 2 diabetes. Well documented, by the way, you guys. The problem with keto diets, they're hard to maintain and sustain every day in front with your friends, when you go out to restaurants, when you go to places. There's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of, temptations in food and things like that when you're really strictly eating a protein and a healthy fat diet with a very low amount of carbohydrate. But it is very healthy for people. And they used to call it the Atkins diet. Today it's called the keto diet. All right. So if you have type 2 diabetes and you want to reverse it and completely get off of your meds, it's very doable for people. A lot of people have conquered it. I've gotten off of all of my diabetes medications because I did something a little more drastic than just exercise and lose a little bit of weight. I went into doing some fasting. So that's what I'm going to explain here in the next 30 minutes. I'm going to go over how I fasted and why I did it. So you're listening to the Slim Body Laser Spa. My name is Dr. Tread Rissacker, and I want you to know that we have openings available for free consultations all week long. My goal is to try to educate and to help as many humans as I can with safe, natural, common sense, techniques and services that can help you to live longer, to be healthier, and to not, to have an edge on why everybody's getting sick. I don't believe in the Ozempic drug or Wegovy or tirzepatide or the semaglutide. I think that the people that should be taking that is a very narrow band of people who truly are dying. They need help more than they need just to lose weight, and yet it's FDA approved now for weight loss without really looking at what is the true parameter of weight loss. What does it really mean to lose weight? It's a very broad term, weight loss. My definition of weight loss, the healthy one, is changing the body fat percentage compared to your lean muscle mass. In other words, you could be thin, look good in a bathing suit, not gain weight, and you could be morbidly obese and not even know it, because visceral fat doesn't show up on the outside like subcutaneous fat. And oftentimes, weight loss without fat loss, without specifically targeting fat, leads to lower muscle tone because your body is losing muscle tone to get its calories. And it also leads to dehydration, and it can lead to more body fat accumulation because we never really got to the point of burning fat. So fasting is a way of targeting fat versus stored energy versus carbohydrates. Now, type 2 diabetes is probably going to affect 50% of our entire adult population. I think it's right up there with 30 or 40% right now are hyperglycemic. And of those hyperglycemic, they're all going into diabetes. This is created, it's called metabolic syndrome. And it is, once you got it and it's in your body, it's really hard to change. I suffer with metabolic syndrome and gosh darn it, it's really hard to treat without, and the drugs don't work. So just figure that out. They wanted to put me on insulin. I said, where's it going to go from here? It's 4 units right now because my blood glucose is 160, 170. What happens when it goes to 200, 250? Oh, that you have to triple your dosage of the insulin. And I'm like, and then what? Your body's just producing more insulin. And then the insulin isn't going down. And then your pancreas fails. When your pancreas fails, you're dead. I mean, that's serious metabolic consequences when your pancreas, when the islets of Langerhans fail to produce insulin. Now you are 100% insulin dependent. You become a type 1 diabetic. And boy, that is a nightmare of managing blood sugar because you got to check it before you eat. You got to check it after you eat. You got to know your blood sugar. You got to know how many units to put in. It's really hard to manage that. So, however, there's 3 things that can reverse type 2 diabetes. 3 things, well documented. Number 1 is having a gastric bypass, having stomach stapling, a lap band, something that reduces the volume of the stomach surgically has an effect on many, many people, not everybody, but most, of completely reversing type 2 diabetes within 3 to 4 days after they have the procedure. So you say to yourself, well, wait a minute. The guy's 300 pounds, 280, whatever the weight is. All they did was cut part of his stomach out in surgery. He hasn't lost any weight yet. The weight hasn't come off yet. How come his diabetes cleared up? What is the mechanism? It's obviously not body fat, because if body fat created type 2 diabetes, then the diabetes would not have gone away till he lost the weight, which can take a year. When you do stomach procedures, the stapling or the gastric bypasses, one of the effects is instantaneous. Your blood sugar balances out. So they're still researching why that is. I don't really know why, but there's messages or mediators within your stomach wall lining which control the type 2 diabetes in some way. But regardless of that, that's one way of reversing type 2 diabetes. The second way, which is well documented, is eating a keto diet. Really, really sticking to keto diet. And what keto diet means, you're eating foods that do not need insulin to raise your blood sugar. Insulin is produced when you eat carbohydrates, and the carbohydrate turns to glucose, which is blood sugar, and that high glucose has to be brought into the cells, whether it's the brain, the muscles, the bone. It has to bring it into the cell, and that causes the high insulin. A keto diet is really fat, healthy fats, and I'm going to talk about that, and then proteins, and then a very low amount of carbohydrates, like 10% of the whole day intake is carbs. Now you can go 100% without carbs, but you need some vitamins. You need some roughage. You need some fiber. There's fiber in meat, by the way. So it's not like there's no fiber in meat. There is. And the carbohydrate your body gets when you don't eat anything comes from the glycerol, which is, you don't really have to understand that. So as a result of eating a very keto diet, many people have reverse type 2 diabetes. Now, I tried that keto diet and I find it's very hard to do all the time, and the one to reverse type 2 diabetes by having a keto diet, you got to do it, I think, for extended periods of time, maybe months and months, even a year or more before it really changes the internal mechanism. So, however, the next step, which has been shown to reverse type 2 diabetes, like everything else, those other two, is fasting. So fasting is something we're going to talk about here in the next 10 to 15 minutes. By the way, if you'd like to come in for a free consultation, my name is Dr. Rissacker. I own the Slim Body Laser Spa. You can lose 3 to 9 inches of stubborn fat while you lay on your back and listen to music. We apply the red light, low-level laser to the subcutaneous fat. When the laser is applied, it releases 400 to 600 calories of triglyceride, which is body fat, into your bloodstream very safely. Now, if you don't eat 2 hours before you come in hungry to the spa, you lay on your back for a half hour with the laser, and then you do a whole body vibration plate for 10 minutes or so. This moves all the fat into the bloodstream, and then you don't eat for 2 more hours. When you leave, drink plenty of water. You will have burned off the inch loss that the laser gave you an hour before. So every time you come into the spa, if you're a good candidate, and I'll determine that if you come in for the consult and you put the paddles on, you can lose 1/8 of an inch to 1 inch in girth almost every time you do it. And that fat that the laser releases is not being sucked out and put in a jar. It's not being frozen where your body has to absorb it as dead tissue. Our procedure drains the fat cells, and then those fat cells are active calories that must be burned and consumed by you within the next 4 hours. And the way we do that is you just not eating for 4 hours. Now, you're not hungry because you're getting food from your body fat. However, for some it's a challenge, but once you understand the process, it isn't a problem. Okay, so I'm offering free consultations, free body fat check, and a free digital pulse analysis, which measures the elasticity of your blood vessels. It measures the resilience of your arteries, your middle vessels, and your circulatory system by passing, you put this little clip on your finger like a pulsometer that you're checking your oxygen saturation, and that measures the pulse rate from your heart, and it gives us the number. It's very easy to do. It's called the digital pulse analyzer, and it gives you your arterial age, by the way. My arterial age was 60. I wish it were lower than that, and I'm working on that. All right. Let's talk about fasting. Now, it's important to know that what fasting means. All right. Now, the first thing, which is really true as a number, is it's really, most people in America are eating, and this was a statistic I got online, are eating about 4,000 calories a day. That seems to be an average. Some are eating less, some are eating more, but 4,000 calories is about average for an American. We're well fed. We have a lot of food available. There's a lot of obesity. There's food everywhere. And as a result of it, we're eating about 4,000 calories per day. My burn rate, how many calories I can safely eat per day and not get fat, for me, is about 2,400 calories. I'm 63. I'm 6 foot tall. I have some muscle tone. I can eat 2,400 calories and I don't gain weight. If I eat 4,000 calories and I can only burn 2,400 based on my age, my weight, my gender, my muscle tone, I am going to make fat because I overate beyond that BMR. And so I do these BMR exams all the time, and I see people down at 1200. I had a woman come in who was in her 80s, and her burn rate was less than 900 calories per day. Yet she's eating 1500 to 1800, which is what a normal, a small meal is. And she was morbidly obese. She was 47% body fat. Didn't know that because she only weighed 128 pounds. So it's very confusing. So the easiest thing for me was to just not eat, is to stop putting calories in my body. Now, fasting is one way of doing that. Okay. So fasting is the practice of abstaining from food and sometimes drink for a specific period. I do never fast without drinking water for me. There are dry fasts, but we're not talking that here. This is a water fast. When I go without eating for a day, I'm drinking water all day long. I keep a gallon jug at my house. I have one in my truck. I have one in my office. I drink water all day long when I'm fasting. It works for me. I feel better. My kidneys free flowly. I feel better. It's a huge thing for me to do the water. I do not suggest dry fasting. Now, there's a differentiation between complete fasting, meaning no food or drink, and then partial fasting, which is limited intake of food or drink. Now, I would tell you that as long as you're drinking water, it's a complete fast. You can't eat anything during fasting. Now, you could have coffee, you could have some tea, but it can't have any calories in it, okay? Now, the historical significance of fasting has been well known in various cultures as religious fasting, Islam, Christianity, Buddhism. There's also a lot of ancient therapeutic uses of fasting in traditional medicine. Didn't Jesus fast the 2 weeks when he went into the mountain, the Sermon on the Mountain, I think? And a lot of cultures go without eating. It's called Lent. They give up something. So fasting is something that's in our nature, but somehow we have lost touch with it, of how important it is. So there's a couple types of fasting that everybody asks about. So there's one where you don't eat at all and you just drink water. And then there's something called intermittent fasting. And intermittent fasting is probably the easiest way if you want to begin fasting, is to do intermittent fasting. And what that means is there's a couple ways of doing it. It's really pretty simple. Is if you only eat once a day, let's say in the 24-hour time frame, you don't have breakfast, you go to sleep at night. let's say you have your last meal at 8:00, and then you go to sleep, you wake up in the morning, and you don't eat again till 6. All you have is dinner. That's called intermittent fasting. So you fasted without any food, just drinking water from when you went to sleep. So you slept through your first 10 hours of sleep with fasting. And then from the morning until the afternoon, you don't eat. And then you eat at 6:00. And you have a common sense, healthy meal, low in carbohydrates, no bread products, no pasta. You just want to have really some protein, some eggs, something of healthy fat, avocado, maybe some chicken breast, maybe some salmon, maybe some pork rib, maybe some steak, maybe some chopped meat, maybe some filet mignon. I mean, this is what, and these are foods which do not raise your insulin, because you want to keep your insulin down. And what fasting does, by not eating and you're not putting any calories in your body's insulin level comes down naturally, because you're not eating anything that insulin has to raise insulin. So intermittent fasting is a way of getting used to having a fat-based, called being fat adapted. So that's a little complicated. what's happening to us now, so that's intermittent fasting, is really just having one period in the day where you eat, and then you stick with that the next day and the next day and the next day. And that's very effective, and that you will lose weight with that super fast, and you'll feel better and you'll have more energy. However, it's not quite as effective as going 1 day, 2 days, or 3 days without eating any food, which is real, fasting. And for me, it was very easy to go right into not eating. I don't know why. It was not a problem for me. I think I have a lot of calories I've already stored. But for some of you, when you stop eating for that first day, you get headaches, you feel lightheaded, you're stressed, and your blood sugar feels like it's dropping, but it's really not, by the way. But it is something which is going down, but it's not like hypoglycemic where you're going to get sick. It's just that your body is used to carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are breads and vegetables and fruits. So what happens if you don't eat for, let's say, one whole day? Okay. So let's say you decide, I'm going to get up this morning and I'm not going to eat until the next day. Well, the first thing that happens is for the next 4 hours, your body is going to burn whatever food you had eaten when you decided to stop. So let's say you had breakfast at 8 in the morning and you said, you know what, I'm not going to eat till breakfast the next day. So that would be a 24-hour fast. The first 4 hours after your breakfast, your body is using the glucose and the carbohydrates in the food you ate. And that's where it's getting its energy from. And then what happens is once those calories run out, which can be within 2 hours or even 3 hours, carbohydrates don't stay very long. The next place your body gets energy is from the liver. The liver has stored glucose in the form of glycogen within the liver itself. And 20%, or like say 2 to 3 pounds of your liver, is stored glucose in the form of glycogen. So right after you finish your meal, 3 to 4 hours later, your body has digested, assimilated, and absorbed those calories. If it didn't absorb it, then you have diabetes, and most of you don't. But your body needs calories. And what it does is it produces those calories. The liver produces those calories. And the glycogen amount is quite significant, and it's enough to last you basically about 20 hours, maybe 24 hours. And in that time frame, glycogen absorbs a lot of water. It's like a sponge. And when you have a full amount of glycogen, because you've been eating regularly and your glycogen stores are full, you're holding on to about 3 to 6 pounds of water just to absorb that glycogen. So now you haven't eaten, you had breakfast, and now you're going into you burning up the glycogen over the next 15 to 18 hours after your last meal. And what happens is when you get rid of the glycogen, you lose the water with it. And that's the weight loss that most people get by skipping meals and not eating, is they're really just losing glycogen. And when glycogen goes down, water's released, and then they feel like they've lost weight when they check the scale. However, if they don't go another day without eating, like let's say they eat the next day, the body restores the glycogen right away. And as a result of restoring the glycogen, you retain water again. And then you say to yourself, I've gained the weight back. It's really water. So if you want to get past the glycogen, you got to go more than 18 or 20 hours of not eating. You got to go for a whole day. Most people have never gone a full day without eating, by the way. I mean, I bet 90, unless you were forced to do it because some horrible thing happened, or, you decided to challenge yourself, most people have never gone more than a day without eating. Thus, they've never really burned through their glycogen. fasting allows you to burn through the glycogen. And when you burn through the glycogen and you don't put food in the mouth, the next thing the body does is it burns, it starts to get the calories from the liver in the form of fat. The body goes into something called gluconeogenesis. It starts making new glucose, and the first source it uses is the liver, not muscle, not stored energy. The energy's gone. Remember, you burned through it the first day of not eating. You've been through all your glycogen, and it's been up and down. That's why you've been miserable. Now you get into the second day, and your body starts producing energy from the liver, the fat that's in the liver. That is what forms the ketones. That body burning its own fat is producing the ketone blast. And that, my friend, is when the hunger goes away. Now, if you drink water and you go through the whole day, second day, your ketone levels go up. Now you're getting more energy. You start to think clearer. Your mind is working better because God thinks you might need to find more food, and you don't want to be laying around lazy fat. And you start to literally rebuild the tissue. You go into a 3 days without eating. Now the ketone amount in your bloodstream, it triples. This is true ketosis. And when you have high ketones from burning your own body fat, your body is becoming fat adapted. And that's really important because fat adaptation allows you to burn fat naturally. All right. I hope I've stimulated some interest in you about this. It's very extensive. And I have a seminar that I do at my office. It's how to fast, how to safely fast. And if you want me to work with you one-on-one, I can do that too. But you need to give us a call at the Slim Body Laser Spa. It's 772-223-5885. My name is Dr. Tred, D-R-T-R-E-D. And if you just put Tred in your phone, Tred in the search bar, Stuart, you're going to get my website and you'll see all the stuff. Hit the contact page, say you'd like to have that free consultation. And if you want to learn about how I fasted and how I got healthy and got off of all of my meds, I can teach you that. Okay, I can give you some handouts and stuff. Of course, my business is laser body sculpting, but I still want to help people. All right. Okay, so I'm going to be here every single Tuesday at 9:05, just like I did today. We're at Crunch Fitness right now. We have a booth at Crunch Fitness. If you want to come down to Stuart, I'm going to be there till 3. That's right on US 1 next to 2J's. Have a great day, you guys. Peace out. Love you a lot. Bye-bye.